Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, January 30th, and welcome to the new Transportation and Environment Committee. I am so excited and pleased to be joined by my two new colleagues, Councilmember Marilyn Balcom and Councilmember Kate Stewart. And I think the addition of both of them to this committee is notable because they represent the northern and most southern districts in the county, right? And so when we talk about transportation solutions needing to be holistic, that is what I think this committee will be working on over this 20th term of the Montgomery County Council. And we have a very packed agenda today to kick off this first T&E committee meeting. And so first we're going to discuss the Executive Regulation 1022 relating to the Transportation Services Improvement Fund. And I see members of the executive team are with us. I'll first turn it over to Dr. Orlin if he wants to introduce this item, or Director Conklin.
Well, good morning. I just wanted to welcome you to this committee. We've been here for a little while, but it's nice to see this committee constituted, and we've got a large number of our team here today just so that you get to see the folks in DOT who are working on transportation items that are to come before you. So Sam Oji is with me to my left, and he's one of the people leading our transit division right now, and he'll be speaking to this first regulation. In addition, Sogan Sarafi is with us today, who's leading our management services in transit. Maricela Cordova, who's leading our transportation engineering division. Brady Goldsmith, who you'll see on lots of budget-related items before the committee. Emily DeTita, who is here, who's our communications lead. Emma Lannon, our deputy director for operations. And then not with us in the room today are Michael Paler, traffic operations and safety, who you've probably corresponded with already. Richard Dorsey, highway services, and we haven't had any snow this winter, so you haven't heard or had to reach out to him, but you will should that happen, I'm sure, with your constituents. Joe's Tamana in our parking division, and Tim Couples, who's the acting deputy director for policy. So just wanted to make sure that you got to see the people who could be here today, and looking forward to working with you over the term of the committee. Oh, and Gary Ehrenrich, I'm sorry, who leads our engagement with WMATA, so he's going to be active in the later presentation, and also Council of Governments, which I know you're also involved with this committee.
Thank you, Director Conklin. Dr. Olin.
All right, the first item, I think, go relatively quickly. It's an executive regulation on the Transportation Services Improvement Fund and how the fund's to be used. This actually formalizes a temporary regulation which has been in effect since last September, and which in turn reflected what the council decided to do in the way of providing incentives to to taxi operators and owners to try to put more wheelchair-accessible vehicles on the street and improve their use. In short, basically three items that are included here which formally change the prior reg from a few years ago. One is it increases the reimbursement to operators of wheelchair-accessible vehicles, or WAVs, from 10 cents a mile to 40 cents a mile. It also increases the per-trip reimbursement for any trip in a WAVE to $25. Prior to that, it had been $15 during the day and $20 at night. And finally, it increases the maximum reimbursement for an operator or owner who wants to convert an existing cab to a wheelchair accessible cab, or to buy a new cab that's wheelchair accessible. Prior to this, the reimbursement rate had been $15,000, the maximum, and that was raised to $45,000. So again, there's nothing new in this reg, it just makes it permanent. And I recommend approval.
So I'll jump in here. With regard to all of the regulations, I think the most important question to ask is how much has been expended since this budget was adopted last June. And for the edification of my colleagues and for others who are following the conversation, this has been something that we've been talking about reforming and amending for many years, recognizing there was a large pool of money that had been untapped. And how do we program these funds so that they get to the intended use, and that's making sure those who are less mobile have mobility access. And so raising some of these funds, raising some of these expenses from $10,000 to $45,000, can you share with us in the last 6 months or so how much has been expended?
We have spent close to $900,000 so far. The reimbursement to the cab drivers, in some cases, has jumped threefold. So they used to average maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month. Some of them are the highest earners are actually close to $4,000 a month now, the providers of the wheelchair accessible. So it's really been an increase that's really has incentivized them to provide these services as we intended by increasing those amounts. So it used to be 10 cents a mile, it's now 40 cents a mile for any service they provide. It used to be $10 flat fee for any service they provide, it's now $25. If you base on percentage of taxi cabs in the county, we have close to 61 wheelchair accessible cabs currently in the county, and you're looking at a total fleet of about 180 cabs. So that's a really high percentage. So the incentives are absolutely working to encourage them to provide the services, and most importantly, have these drivers choose to drive wheelchair accessible over sedans because of those incentives.
I appreciate you sharing the 180 cabs that we have in our fleet.
Yes.
And how many have been outfitted? Do we know?
We
that
have
number?
about 61 wheelchair accessible
Well, that's great.
in the county, yeah. It's a struggling industry. Unfortunately, when you go back to 2013, there were close to 750 cabs in the county.
Yeah.
And it's the network companies, Uber, Lyft, has basically decimated the cab industry. So these incentives are keeping people, incentivizing people to drive cabs in the county who would otherwise, go to other professions. So,
And do we have the data regarding the number of increased rides that might be caused because of some of this investment?
well, the total trip numbers are lower than they were previously. And it goes without saying, you're looking at 750 cabs versus 180 cabs. So it's down. But the way you can look at it is that these investments, without the investments you're making, these drivers would prefer to drive sedans. And that's it. They're more doing these wheelchair accessibles because of the added incentive to them. So people with disabilities, people that use wheelchair, elderly residents are getting the benefits of these reimbursements to the cab drivers who would ordinarily have preferred to drive sedans. So that's the way I believe we should be looking at it.
Last question I'll ask. While overall ridership is down, and that is understood, that's unfortunately the new normal, right? Because of market share. Do we know what the percentage of the ridership is with respect to those with disabilities? Is the call and ride program constituting a greater share of those calls now?
So I would say this, call and ride, before the pandemic, we used to average about 11,000 trips a month. We are right around 7,500 trips now a month. And yes, a lot of those are people with disabilities, elderly residents who are obviously taking advantage of this program. Part of the reimbursement to the cab companies here is the rounding up of trips that are usually under $10, which was a big issue for the drivers. They don't want to take short trips that pay them less than $10. This program does round up those trip totals. So if it's a $5 trip, the fund adds another $5 to the cab driver. So they're incentivized to provide those services.
Well, and when we get to the conversation with the MATA later this morning, we'll learn that a 30 to 35% drop off, which is what the call and ride program has experienced pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, is minuscule compared to some other forms of transportation. So I guess a 30-35 isn't too bad.
Yeah.
Colleagues, any comments, questions?
You want, okay.
One had the button about to be pushed. Councilmember Stewart.
No, I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this to us. I think it's a great project. I did have one thing, if you could just talk about once somebody, a driver receives these monies, how are we, as Council President Glass was talking about, looking at trips and other things, could you just talk about what is the responsibility of the drivers who receive the funds?
So the drivers will submit a manifest to us at the end of the month. And with those manifests, and it's part of the Chapter 53, the regulation requires that they maintain accurate trip records. So they submit those to our office. We do some level of verification. We unfortunately cannot call everybody on the list, but we kind of pick a few people on their list of people they transported just to verify that those trips are valid. Then we just do the calculation. We calculate the mileage. We ask drivers sometimes to come to the circle there at the EOB. We read the mileage on their vehicles to see that it corresponds with what they submitted. So we do some level of due diligence in our process of reconciling everything they submit. But they keep accurate records. The law requires that they keep accurate records. They submit those to us. Each cab driver does have a purchase order that we created for them, and we just draw down on those purchase orders and maintain the records for them.
Great. Well, thank you. And I know, even under COVID, people going to the doctor, their doctor's appointments and other things, and not being able to take public transportation, but needing, a taxi service or a car service was very important. So expanding that access, I think, is a great service. So thank you for the work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. This is a fantastic program, and it serves a great gap in service. Just in the packet, the revenue and expenditures throughout the next 6 years, circle 24. So the balance continues to go down, as I guess intended. But what happens in the out years with this fund?
A couple of the programs that are in that 6-year program were grant funds to expend an accumulated balance. And working with the Office of Grants Management, Mr. Oji and his team have been processing grant applications now. So there's some one-time expenditures in there, and then the program is intended to normalize so that the inflows are closer to the outflows in the outer years. But there may be the need to adjust the level of reimbursements depending on the level of utilization and the number of cabs in the county in the longer term.
And I was thinking that the large outlays for the equipment will continue to decrease. I guess is the assumption that we're going to reach a 75%, 80%.
There's actually a goal to get to 100%, whether or not that's realistic, and there are some issues with that, with the desirability of wheelchair accessible vehicles for all customers, which not all customers prefer to get in and out of a higher profile vehicle. So that's something we will have to address with you over time, but the fleet has to be replaced periodically. I don't remember what, is it 5 years?
Yeah.
We had been changing the duration because of the stresses on the industry, so that there will always be new wheelchair accessible cabs entering the fleet as long as the fleet is maintaining its size. If the fleet continues to shrink, we may not have that need. But then we may need to find another way to meet the needs of these residents.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Dr. Rowland?
Yeah, if I could just ask a follow-up question on I was looking at Circle 24 as well. I was going to ask Sam if you mentioned the expenditures in the first half of the fiscal year is about $900,000 or something. The total expenditures that were forecast were $3.2 million. Does that include other? The $900,000, was that strictly for the 3 items that we talked about, or is it for everything?
It's pretty much each and every item. So far this fiscal year, the retrofit and purchase of vehicles, I think we've had 2. We just were notified by one of the cab companies that they've purchased 11 new wheelchair accessible vehicles, so that will also be included within this fiscal year.
Okay.
Also,
So you think we're on track for the 3.2 roughly, or?
we're not going to spend 3.2 million this year.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so then the reserve will be bigger than we thought.
Yeah.
Is the revenues also coming in about what we thought?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we also have the $800,000 for the grants program, capital and operating. We received about 55 applications from nonprofits in the county for purchase and retrofit of wheelchair accessibles, as well as operating funds for them. So we have a reviewing committee that's currently reviewing those applications. We'll be making awards shortly for those grant programs.
I appreciate that, because I remember 3-4 years ago having the first conversation about this and being told there was approximately $4 to $5 million that was sitting in the fund that was largely untapped. And so over the course of the next few years, we tried to figure out how to come up with some priorities and parameters which would then enable and encourage members of our taxi cab industry here to better utilize the funds. And in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, knowing that just shy of $1 million has been used shows that it is being utilized. And look forward to hearing more information at the end of the fiscal year about ridership, and specifically how many call and ride programs have been scheduled, rides have been scheduled during that time, to see what the causation truly is here, because ultimately when this program was created, it was created to help those with mobility issues to get around our community. I'll admit, for my colleagues' background, when we had this conversation a number of years ago, I openly asked if some of these funds could be used for other ways, for other transportation needs, and I was strongly told that the fund was set up for this specific reason, and we should hold true to that reason, and I'm glad we are holding true to that reason. I'm glad people are starting to utilize it more. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I want to make sure we're not at risk of losing any grant funding if we're not spending the money. Make sure that that's not happening. And then the other issue is nonprofits. My ears perked up on that. I think one of the concerns for nonprofits, there are many nonprofits who this would be an addition to their service, but it's the operating cost. If they had the vehicle, they don't have the operating funds to transport. That's something that we might look at in the future. If there are funds remaining for these vehicles, perhaps we need to look at that as well.
Yes, no, we're not at risk of losing any grant funds. These are essentially tax funds collected under the rules of the Public Service Commission and transferred to the county. So we'll continue to accumulate them if we're not using them. And to Council President Glass's point, the allowable uses of these funds are greater than what the county has elected to use them for to date. It can be used to enhance mobility for the target population, senior, disabled, I'm missing one, low income, but it can't supplant other program funds, so we can't just say we're going to make a substitution in the ride-on budget with these funds, but we can use them, as you mentioned, Councilmember Balcom, for supporting operating expenses for nonprofits and others, where we have really to date focused these on the taxi industry itself, and recently in this grant program expanded it to some extent for nonprofits, but we could do more if we continue to accumulate funds here.
Sorry, we're just going to build on each other here. As you mentioned it, one of the places I'm sure this is already on your radar are the villages and the nonprofits that work in our community to assist residents in older residents mostly, to going to doctor's appointments and other things. And I know there are a number of villages that are more active than others and already have their volunteer ride programs up and running. But as my colleague said, we were actually just in North Bethesda in the WMATA area over the weekend talking to residents who are working on getting their village up and running and starting their volunteer ride service. So I think that is a good possible area to look into, because that network is already very vibrant and connected to the community and those folks who need the rides. So thank you.
Last thing I was saying, and I appreciate the additive nature of this. I love this committee already. 4 years ago almost, at my request, we had a joint T&E and HHS work session to talk about creative ways to transport folks, to work with our nonprofit partners that have varying degrees of funding and transportation programs. And so maybe that's something we'll do again in the coming weeks and months. Very good. So there is a regulation currently before us. It's a Method 2 regulation, and so without objection, we'll support.
Yep.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
The next item is the main event for the day, which is the State Transportation Priorities Letter. And Dave, why don't you join us?
Our friends from WMATA might disagree, but I.
Well, any event, no comment there. This is a letter which actually by state law is supposed to be provided every year from the counties, but we typically don't. We only do it when there's a change in the composition of the elected officials here. Of course, there has been definitely this time, or if there's some other major changes happen at the state level. The last time we did a comprehensive update of this letter was 2020. There was a sort of a minor change that accompanied the 2020 letter back in June of 2022, but other than that, we haven't had a change for quite a while. I just have to say, sort of a general comment. The idea here is to advise the state as to what things can be added to their consolidated transportation program, which isn't already funded. So, for example, a project like the Georgia Avenue improvements in Montgomery Hills, you'll no longer see in this letter because it is funded now, so there's no reason to ask for it. Some folks have asked about that. However, I have to say the number of projects that we actually get approved off this list are very few. So it's as much an exercise in the council and the executive exercising their telling the priorities not just to the state but to the people as to where they think the next projects ought to be. And the letter is supposed to be very specific, and this letter is. The other thing I want to say is that this really should be and has always been a joint letter with the county executive. So the county is presenting one face to the General Assembly and to the governor. Probably the worst thing we could do is have dueling letters. Most better to have no letter at all. So you do have recommendations in here, and we'll go through each section.
Well, and Dr. Orland, let me just jump in real quick also. I appreciate the background and the high-level purpose of this letter, and I will reiterate a point that you made in that these are funding requests for the state for priorities that we have. It is essentially a wish list of items, infrastructure and transportation projects that county government would like the state to support. And that is the lens through which I'm looking at this letter and the lens through which I will engage. It is a wish list of items we would like the state government to help us build.
Thank you.
Want to jump in? Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Wallen.
So starting really on page, and you had the public hearing on this last week. I've included all the public hearing testimony, and I'll refer to it periodically as I go through each section. The letter is structured the same way the last letter was. There are 8 different categories. The categories themselves are not prioritized. The projects within the categories are. And so you have essentially 3 sets, actually more than 3 sets, but 3 sets of priorities that are presented here. One from the planning board when they met on January 19th, one from the county executive who also transmitted his recommendations about the same time, and then you have my recommendations. And you also, of course, have individual recommendations from some of the public hearing testimony. The introductory paragraphs are roughly the same between the executives and the planning board's version, so I don't think there should be any change there. The first major issue is the bus rapid transit implementation section, which is page 3. And you see there the planning board's ranking, the executive's ranking, and the council staff's ranking. I'll just summarize the main changes, the differences are, and let everybody here talk about why they came up with what they came up with. The top priority in each case, I would say, is the 355 central portion of 355 BRT, which is from Montgomery College, Rockville, to Montgomery College, Germantown. That's a project that it shows as being fully funded in the CIP, county CIP, but assuming federal aid, which we're on a federal track for, but it also assumes funds from the opportunity lanes. The oral, I'll call it the oral deal that's been done, has not been memorialized in an MOU or any kind of legal agreement yet. The first difference is that the executive is recommending that as part of that priority, the first priority is also 355 North from Montgomery College, Germantown, up to Clarksburg, eventually to the I'm drawing a blank, the mall, the outlet mall, thank you, the outlet mall. And then to the south down to Bethesda. Those two sections are not funded for construction, they are funded for design. The next priority is Veersmill Road, all three, the planning board, executive, myself, I'll recommend that. That is also a project that's fully funded, but it does assume federal aid, and this project is on a federal track. And then the next priority is all the same also, which is phase 2 of the US 29. The council just last fall selected an alternative, which is to build a lane in the median to supplement what is out there now in the flash service. And that project is just beginning into preliminary design now. And we're joined by Tim Couples, who was introduced earlier in absentia, by the way. And then from that point south on these lists gets more different. Maryland 355 North, it was the fourth priority for the planning board and myself. Again, for the executive, it's part of his first priority. And then number 5, we have 3 different scenarios, 3 different ideas, which would be the 5th priority. The planning board's recommending 355 South, again from Bethesda up to Rockville. The executive's recommending the unfunded I-270 corridor connectors. Some of them are funded, that's why I mentioned it that way. Some are funded already by the county, but a lot of them are not. They're not even in facility planning yet. And my recommendation is the 5th is the North Bethesda Transitway, which is really reaching a milestone this summer when the facility planning is going to be finished and the council will be asked to make a selection as what the preferred alternative is and possibly fund the next stage. The interesting thing about that project is that if the funding comes forward for the next stage and the construction after that, it is actually in sync in time with the Phase 1 South of the Opportunity Lanes project. And this project links directly to that and would provide a exclusive busway from Virginia to the Red Line. And then you have New Hampshire Avenue as the 6th priority. That's also in facility planning right now, but it's a year behind the North Bethesda Transitway. It's not scheduled to be finished for just the initial planning until the end of FY24, and the consensus, at least amongst the staffs, have been, I think the executive and planning board too, is that after that stage, it really should be taken over by the state, because that's a project which basically goes through 3 separate jurisdictions, the Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and even into the District of Columbia to connect to Fort Totten. And then below that you have the park and ride expansion. The executive actually has it further up in the list as number 4. This is basically locations on BRT lines where the expectation is that more and more people who can't walk or bike or easily take a bus to the BRT station will want to drive there and take the BRT. And then you see further down, you see North Bethesda Transitway on the executive and planning board, and 355 South for myself. I have it lower because, frankly, it overlaps with Metro and with Ride On Extra. So it's not providing that much more service than what's already out there. So even though it's in design, it seems to have a lower priority. And then finally, at least for the planning board and the council staff, the remaining I-270 corridor connectors, not because they're not needed, but because they're, in terms of where they are in the planning and design process, they're the furthest behind, other than the ones that are already funded, which again, that's not part of this. So the goal for you all is to come up with your own ranking here. Mix and match, however, however you choose.
Thank you. So, I remember when we talked about this last 2 years ago or so, talking about 355, and Director Conklin, Mr. Couples, correct me if I'm wrong, 30-mile stretch, 26 miles?
22.
22, there we go. So a 22-mile stretch which can't be completed in one fell swoop, so it needs to be put into segments for funding and planning. And at the time, I said that we need to focus on the mid-northern part of that stretch, recognizing the dearth of transit options that exist. You're no longer within the Red Line corridor. You're in some of the most heavily dependent bus transit dependent communities. And then also, as we take a holistic approach to transportation solutions in the county and the region, if we want to provide more transportation options, then we need to provide more transportation solutions. And so that is why I supported 355 North and Central. And so Director Conklin, can you share with us why the county executive has not separated them as such?
I can. There's a desire to have a viable funding plan to implement all of the 355 projects, granted not in immediately the same time, but as close to the same time as possible. And I think you highlighted the values of the north section. The south section really connects a lot of the transit-oriented development nodes that are occurring along 355 between Bethesda, principally Grosvenor Metro, but Bethesda and the Rockville Metro Station. So it's serving a different purpose, which is connecting a lot of new development activity and unlocking the potential of that major growth area of the county. But there's a desire to get all of these done as quickly as we can, and that's why we've combined them as one statement in the priority, particularly if we are going to get substantial additional state support. We'd like them to think holistically about that corridor rather than them picking and choosing which elements of it they would like to fund. So that was the rationale for that.
Sure, and certainly in emphasizing the central and north sections, we are not delegitimizing the need for the south section. But I think if you look at mostly any part of the county, that is a transit-rich area. That is already served by multiple forms of transit. And so I would again support central and north as council staff and as the planning board have delineated them. And so I will support the council staff and the council staff recommendation for reasons I've just shared. I see both want to get it. I'll defer to Councilmember Balcom now.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. I agree with the splitting out of the the 355 BRT, specifically because the central is ready to go, and the others are along the way. My biggest issue with the BRT is the funding source for 355 BRT. I know that we'll get to it further on down, but we can't have two opposing views in the same letter. So if the I-270 project, and I know we'll get to it, but if that's not going forward, we can't rely on the funding for the BRT. And so I think that we need to resolve that in the letter, because it clearly states that we're assuming the funding's coming from the Opportunity Lane project for this. So that's the one issue. And then, I agree with the three segments. And then the I-270 corridor connectors, I know that it's an important project and that it's not quite ready. I just wouldn't want to see it slip very far. And just, if we can have a moment of silence for the Corridor Cities Transitway. This project has been on the books for a very long time, and it never really got the advocacy and support, except for a tiny little corner of the world up county. But I think it's important to note that this letter is requesting the end of the CCT, and I think that should just be noted. And one of the reasons that I fully supported the CCT for a very long time. It's because it really was a bells and whistles, state-of-the-art light rail. Well, it wasn't a light rail, a BRT, designated guideway, designated roadway project. And so whatever happens with the I-270 corridor connectors, which I'm very familiar with, and I support that. We just need to make sure that it has the same quality as the CCT had intended.
I can just say that actually I would think of the corridor connectors in the whole as being superior just to the single line CCT, which if you remember looking at a map of what it was a line of spaghetti going all kinds of ways. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't that effective a route for people coming from, say, Clarksburg and Germantown. They were better served, frankly, by buses coming on I-270 itself and go directly in. And so what the corridor connectors did was provide actually a lot more BRT or bus priority, put it that way, preference. A lot of it in the BRT right of way, and so the CCT right of way. So yes, you're right. CCT was around for over 30 years in plans, but the corridor forward plan did replace that, so it is no longer in the master plan. And these are there instead.
If I could just make one comment about the corridor connectors. We have 2 of them that are funded for design and will likely be in operation sometime in 2024, early 2025. There's another one that's been planned, and there are several more that have been conceptualized. So that's why it's higher in our list than some of the other recommendations that you see here, is because we have made significant progress on advancing the ones that are part of the Great Seneca Transit Network that are just connecting Shady Grove Station to the Life Sciences cluster there, and then some other options from there to go to the north and connect to the 355 corridor. So it's not all of the corridor connectors that are in that program now, but the ones that have advanced with state aid for acquiring the buses. So we would like to see more state investment in this as the replacement for the CCT. That's the reason it's number 5 in our list versus lower, and perhaps council staff and the planning department didn't quite connect the work that's underway to that concept of corridor connectors, but that's why we have it higher in our ranking.
We didn't connect the connectors?
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm taking a slightly different view than my colleagues on the 355 and agree with the county exec's office, but I think I'm on the losing end of that one today. But I do want to say I'm appreciative of the county exec's office and thinking holistically about 355, and in particular the connectivity in areas. I think, as we're moving forward with these transit areas, transit projects, what I'm hearing from a lot of people is like, we have them, but we're needing to connect better. And so, but I understand I'm going to probably be on the losing end of that one today. I would like to ask about the New Hampshire Avenue project, because that is one that shows up different on different priorities on different lists, and in particular, that is one I would actually agree with the planning board's placement of it a bit higher, and wonder from the county exec's office why it is placed where it is. It's a project that has been in the works, as we just heard before. It's about a year behind. And in particular, this is really a project that could help strengthen the economy in the eastern part of the county and create a great deal of connectivity. It is, I'm just going to go on a spiel here about New Hampshire Avenue for a moment. Having lived it, it is the gateway to our state. And I do believe we need state investment in this. We need to be talking about it a lot more. When you're coming into the great state of Maryland from Washington, D.C., and you enter on New Hampshire Avenue, you would have no idea that you are entering our wonderful state. And the traffic there and the pedestrian safety issues up and down New Hampshire Avenue need to be addressed. So I'd really like to, I agree we need the state more involved in this because of and no one knows better than the jurisdictional issues on New Hampshire Avenue than I do sitting up here. But I'd like to know why the county exec's office didn't have it higher on the list.
Happy to respond to that, and it's not because it isn't a priority. Of the 2 projects that are in the planning phase right now in our program, it was rated higher in our view than the North Bethesda Transitway. The North Bethesda Transitway serving not the same community, but a similar community as the 355 project, whereas the New Hampshire Avenue corridor is an entirely different geography with an entirely different set of needs and providing a new set of benefits in that portion of the county. It is ahead of schedule in our planning process, which you'll rarely hear us say that we have a project ahead of schedule. So it may reach a conclusion not too dissimilar from North Bethesda in terms of time. And the only reason that it's rated lower than the items above it is that the items above it are all further along in their planning and development than North Bethesda. The park and ride expansion is really 3 particular things. 1, Clarksburg Park and Ride, which we don't currently have. Expansion in Germantown, which had been, at least up until 2020, a limitation on the use of the ride-on system. And Burtonsville, which there's a redevelopment proposal underway that has a funding gap for replacing the parking capacity there. So that's why that's higher on our list than it is in the other list. It's not a fundamental, we love parking and others don't, but those were specific things we needed to realize the vision of the program. So that is the reason why it's where it is and why I think it's 1 step higher in our recommendations than it is in the council staff's recommendations.
Great. Well, I would like my colleagues just to consider potentially even moving it above the park and ride expansion to reflect the planning board's recommendation.
So the packet I'm looking at, the planning board has listed New Hampshire Avenue as their 6 and the park and ride is 7.
Right.
And so what are you proposing?
Well, I'm trying to figure out which, are we starting as the council staff is the one that we're...
So
Start wherever you want.
you can start wherever you want. I
So either
off
I
of
want...
that, expressed my support for the council staff recommendation, which mirrors very closely to the planning board.
Right. So I think under each of these, the New Hampshire Avenue project for the planning board's recommendation and council staff is above the park and ride expansion. For the planning board, it is above the North Bethesda Transway project. And for the county exec, it's above the North Bethesda's Transitway project, but below the park and ride expansion. What I'm proposing is that New Hampshire Avenue on the list gets before the North Bethesda Transitway project and before the park and ride expansion.
Okay. So let's work off of the council staff recommendation. And so you are proposing that item number 6, New Hampshire Avenue,
Move to number 5.
move to number 5, and that we swap that. Any objections?
Go with that.
Great. Okay. Without objection. Any other comments? I think it is noteworthy, as we've had this conversation, to note that of the 9 items as they're listed, I believe 6 of them are in my 2 colleagues' districts, or at least pass through the districts, which is another great reason why they are on this great committee. You going to differ with that suggestion?
No.
Okay.
But I do want to come back to the funding source.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I have 3 roles here. One is to analyze this, one is to make recommendations. Now my role is as a clerk. So what I'm hearing is you agree with the council staff recommendation for the 9 priorities, except you'd reverse 5 and 6?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's, before, Ms. Stewart, you said you were opposed to the first 4 that Mr. Glass had said, but are you basically...
Do you want to be
agreeing
on
with-
record?
I don't need to be on, that's fine.
Okay, so it'd be 3-0 in
Yeah,
favor
that's
of
fine.
Great.
council
Thank you.
staff with that change between 5 and 6. Okay, that was easier than I thought it'd be. Next on page 4 is next category is Vision Zero. What Vision Zero is a whole slew of projects all over the county. The reason why there's not individual ones listed here is because most of them are relatively small, but there literally could be hundreds of them. And so all that's being asked here is that we want the state to expend a lot more money for Vision Zero type projects. And the executive and the planning board versions of the letter are basically identical in that respect.
I'm glad that this is its own separate item in this letter, recognizing how important street safety is for everybody, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers, and the acknowledgement that most of these incidents that occur are on state highways: Georgia Avenue, New Hampshire Avenue, University Boulevard, Rockville Pike, Old Georgetown Road, Connecticut Avenue, and we desperately need the state support to help us. And I'll take that one step further. We need the state coordination to help us. I appreciate their effort to fix certain areas, be it University Boulevard or most recently Old Georgetown Road. But what we're missing is the communication and the coordination to make those efforts work for everybody. And so I know that we will be having a new Secretary of Transportation, and it is my hope that soon-to-be Secretary Wiedefeld will be able to establish stronger communication so that the help and support that we need and that we're asking for in this document comes to us, but it comes to us through true partnership. So, Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was just looking at the draft letter. I'm on Circle 25 at the top, and I know we were using prior letters as our basis here, but the sentence at the top talks about improvements with a particular emphasis on urban and suburban communities and transit access. Given the work that we've been doing on the equity emphasis areas, I'm wondering if we could if it's appropriate to update that language, referencing our equity emphasis areas rather than talking about the emphasis on urban and suburban communities. Thank you.
Any comments?
Just one. Excuse me, Dr. Erlin, you started earlier about that these are all sections, and where the sections are placed don't have a bearing.
That's correct.
But I just noticed that Vision Zero and BRT was flipped from prior letters.
Oh, I think what happened there was just because we thought BRT was more complicated
Mm-hmm.
and involved more money probably than the adding to the Vision Zero, because these projects are all quite huge, and we wanted to make sure that was highlighted. But we can change the order.
No, I was just curious because I was going to lobby for moving other things around. But but if it's really not priority listing.
Yeah, I should step back. How this got started this year, and most years in the past, the staffs got together and said, okay, let's look at the last letter and how would we, at least amongst the three, planning board, DOT, and myself, is there any consensus we can come up with? And part of that was what I just mentioned about BRT being first because of the size of the ask. But there's no magic to that. I mean, if the committee prefers that Vision Zero go first, that's fine.
If you want to make the suggestion, I'd be good with it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one other addition I would like to make in this section is adding a second sentence. I'm not looking at the letter right now, but in my notes, adding a second sentence specifically stating the number of individuals who were struck and tragically killed on our roads last year. And the numbers I have, and they might need updating from you all, 574 pedestrians and bicyclists were hit on our road, and another 19 were tragically killed.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part.
19.
Oh.
And those are non-motorist
Right.
incidents.
Okay. And you would want to add that in the second sentence of the first paragraph?
Yeah, I mean, it just needs to be,
Included somewhere.
it needs to be up front. Yep.
Okay.
Emphasizing the impact of what we're talking about here. So,
Okay.
okay.
All right. Otherwise, are the committees okay with Revision 0 section?
Yes, one other question I do have, and it goes back to Councilmember Balcom's just organizing philosophy. Can you share with us why Vision 0 is a separate section from the pedestrian and bicyclist facilities?
We had it in that way in the last letter, and it was to separate the systematic, data-driven approach for all types of facility investment from the capital project asks that are in the pedestrian bike section.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
And you'll see that some of the road projects are also really safety related. River Road's an example. So that's, again, if it's an individual standalone project which can cost millions, we typically have that in one of the other categories. Vision 0 is sort of a catch-all for a myriad of smaller efforts, but of course add up to something very significant.
And these are all interrelated in some form or fashion.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the next category is locally operated transit systems, or LOTS, support, and here there's pretty much total agreement between Planning Board and Executive. The first priority is for more funds for zero-emission vehicles and infrastructure for the 3 ride-on depots. The second priority is for resources to expand ride-on extra on 355. I mentioned that earlier. Right now it runs from Lake Forest Mall to Medical Center Metro Station, and the hope here is that could be extended north to Germantown and south to Bethesda CBD, and to be able to run that service all day rather than just during the peak period, which it is now. And the third priority is for larger operating grants, typically from the state to the county for local transit service ride-on and its ilk. The only difference here is the executive's draft further requests that the LOTS grants be adjusted annually for inflation. I think that's a good idea. So I'm recommending agreeing with the executive's version of this.
Any objection or comment?
No.
Okay.
Okay. The fourth one should be relatively easy, I hope, too. This is WMATA. The 2 letters are identical. The top priority is for funding the yet unprogrammed cost of construction for the new north entrance to the North Bethesda Metro Station. If you may recall, the council has 100% funded the design of that project, but has only put in 25% of the cost of land acquisition and construction. The idea that we would get the rest from the state or developers or whatever. And the executive, in fact, in his last amendment sent over a few weeks ago, recommends delaying once again that construction, again waiting, hoping that there be some kind of other source of revenue that could supplement things. Well, here the ask is, the number one ask under this category is for that. And the second priority is for more Metrobus priority treatments. Think of that as being Metro Bus's version of Ride-On Extra. Essentially buses that run more frequently, have fewer stops, and so therefore are faster for commuters and their corridors. We actually have, for example, New Hampshire Avenue. We have a Metro priority service there now. The K5, I think it is. K9. So it's not a dog. It's a good service. K9, and we want to see more of that. Do you concur with that?
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you very much. I agree with these and would just request that we look at the language regarding the North Bethesda North Metro entrance, because I think we can do a better way of explaining why this is a high priority improvement as folks are looking at it. Like we did on the other side of my district, on New Hampshire Avenue, we talked about how New Hampshire Avenue is the economic driver for the East County. Well, having this North Metro entrance is vital to the economic vitality of North Bethesda and continuing to attract the biotech industry there. So I think there are ways that we could just beef that up a bit and not just say it's a high priority of improvement, but say why we believe it is a high priority improvement. Thank you.
Consider it beefed.
Thank you. It's been a high priority of ours, and I know we'll have more conversations about that in the weeks to come as we talk about the CIP.
Okay, the next category is commuter rail expansion. Here there are 4 priorities, and there's one major difference between the Planning Board and the Executive. The Planning Board's recommendation is to have the state fund some remaining portions of the Boyd's Metro Station, Boyd's Mark Station improvements. Most of it is already programmed by the county, but there's some elements that have not been. and it's a relatively small amount of money, but we're asking for design and construction money for that. The next two priorities are for planning for 2 new MARC stations, one at North Bethesda, but it would be over on the track, so it would be a couple blocks east of where we're just talking about. And the other is the Shady Grove MARC station, basically adjacent to the metro station, just like at Rockville, where the MARC station is directly adjacent. And then the fourth priority is a study to looking at how to add midday and off-peak service. We know we can't do that unless we have a third track. The executive would have that as the top priority, and then the other 3 would be in the same order following from that. And I think the way to think about this is, while probably if you took all of time, then certainly the midday and off-peak service is the highest priority, because you really can't have a huge increase in MARC service without that, without the third track. But then the question you have to ask yourself is, like, what's reasonably that we can get funds from the state in the short or 6-year term, and that's why the planning board and myself recommend the first column priorities, but the executive recommends the second, because it really is more important in the long term.
If I could speak to the priority recommendations we made, the midday and off-peak service is the most transformational thing we could do in terms of MARC. It would benefit Silver Spring, Kensington, Rockville, Germantown, and Boyd's to some extent. But that is a model that has been employed in other jurisdictions, particularly the MBTA in Boston coming out of the pandemic. They restructured their entire commuter rail operation to focus on consistent all-day service, and have seen huge ridership return based on that, which is not something we've seen in this region. It's our understanding that the other 2 stations require similar capital investment in order to get them to work within this system, given the freight demands in that corridor. So I don't really see the advantage to prioritizing the study of North Bethesda MARC or Shady Grove without really trying to realize the full benefit of that line to begin with. And the Boyd's improvements are important. It's historic preservation of a building, but the components that provide the transportation benefit are already funded in our program. We could get more out of the platforms and MTA investment and the station facilities itself, but the parking capacity and bus turnaround so that we can have bus access there are already funded. So it was, yes, important that we get everything done, but probably less important than stating a priority to get a much more robust use of that rail line for the county's benefit into the hands of the new administration. So that was our justification.
Yeah, I mean, none of us could disagree with that at all. It's when we talk about adding planning money, though, basically you do the planning, so the very next step you could ask once the planning's done is for design and construction. And the question is, if we do the planning for any of these things, what's the likelihood of being able to get funds from the state to do design and construction of what you've just planned? And the cost of a third track is going to be enormous and impactful. It has the most benefits by far, and in fact, it also helps North Bethesda and Shady Grove as well, because the CSX's position for decades has been, you can't add a stop without deleting a stop. And I don't mean a full stop, but a train stopping, let's say a new station at North Bethesda, means they will not stop and make one stop and some other stop along the line. And so the obvious ones to look at would be for North Bethesda is Garrett Park, and the obvious one to look at Shady Grove is Washington Grove. And so it's likely that if either of those 2 stations happen before the MARC line has its third track and can have more service, would mean less stops at those other 2. Overall, it's probably a benefit to the county because there's more users, potential users, at North Bethesda and Shady Grove than there are at Washington Grove or Garrett Park. However, if you were able somehow to get the third track done, then all that is moot. So it's a complicated issue. I'll just leave it at that.
Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. So I agree with Director Conklin that the midday off-peak service is the most transformational of these projects, but I would say it would be the most transformational project of everything on this list. When we look at the up-county, we have heavy rail to Germantown and points north, and every time we talk about increased capacity in the up-county, the default is always we need to increase MARC service. So we need to do that, and I think that it should be, I think that it should stay as the number one. I'd like to see Mark moved all the way up to the very top of the list, but I understand that why it's here. So I think that, and I understand Dr. Orland's point about it's a complicated issue, and adding that third rail is going to be extremely expensive and very complicated, but we use it as a default all the time we talk about transit, and so we either need to move forward, or we need to accept that that it's never going to happen. So I want to push that forward as much as we can. Just while we're on this topic of the Boyd Station improvement, this is not for this letter. I just wanted to add that there has been a community request to add additional restroom facilities at that station. I'd like to look at that. That's a discussion for another time. So is it?
Great. I'll agree with my colleague and agree with the executive's position on this. I think we should start off with the midday and off-peak services. I agree that it is transformational and would be if we move forward, and I think we should be advocating for it that way. Thank you.
I concur. I agree with the executive proposal because literally it would be putting the caboose before the locomotive if we went the other way around, right? We need to increase and have a more robust service so that all the stations can then utilize that robust service. So we're all in agreement here.
Okay. Pet bike facilities, there's almost full agreement here. Both drafts have the same top three priorities. The number one priority is increasing the number of bikeways and sidewalks along state highways. Typically, that is not something they've accepted unless they're building a new road. But retrofitting, they say, over to you, Montgomery County, and we'd like to see a whole lot more from the state in there. Number two is funding for more projects within the county's bicycle and pedestrian priority areas. We call them BIPAs. A lot of these are the smaller projects, but many of them within usually urban centers or suburban centers where there's a lot of pet bike activity, and some of those are on state highways. So that'll be our second priority. And the third priority would be more financial support for the county's bike sharing program. The only difference in the letters is the planning board has a fourth priority, which was actually a priority in the prior letter, which is the completion of the Intercounty Connector multi-use trail. Some of it was built when the ICC was built, but there are a lot of missing sections, and this would be a planning study to identify where exactly the rest of it would go, which hopefully eventually would lead to construction funding. But this ask is just for planning. So where's the committee on that?
Councilmember Balcom?
I'm just curious as to why the ICC trail fell off.
In this letter, we just have a lot of priorities, and we anticipate that if we somehow had the funding that was necessary to build that trail, which is along the highway, not necessarily where people live, it would not compete well against other bike facilities we would like to build that are more central to getting people to and from our business districts, metro stations, and other places. So we elected to not include it this time. Those facilities weren't built with the ICC for reasons. Those reasons are not different now than they were then, and it just seems to us like it's a project that probably isn't going to proceed.
It's also probably, most DOT, whether it's county or state bikeways, are transportation-based, and the ICC trail is sort of a mix between transportation and recreation, frankly. Don't see a whole lot of commuters going from the East County to Germantown or in Gaithersburg using the ICC trail the whole way. Some would, but other than that, it would be also more recreational.
Good question. Any objections? Not hearing any.
So you agreeing with the planning board's letter? Adding that as a fourth priority? The executive didn't have it as a priority. The first three priorities are the same. The planning board said, and I'm recommending also well, that the ICC trail be on the list, but as the fourth priority.
I'm fine with the planning board recommendation.
Ms. Balcom, Ms. Stewart?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. I used to staff T&E back in the 90s when Mr. Leggett was a chairman, and he would vote with his eyebrows. So sometimes I'd have to ask, as the clerk in me has to ask, just make sure it's on the record. Okay. next two sections can be a little complicated. The next section is the state roads that are not interstates. And here, actually, the order that's being recommended by the planning board and the executive are virtually the same, with the exception that the planning board keeps the ask for accelerated traffic signal modernization, I think where it is in the existing letter, which is fourth. The executive is recommending having that be the top priority. Other than that, the order of the rankings are, I think, identical. Clopper Road, this is in the area from Quince Orchard Road up to Watkins Mill Road. It was obviously a very strong recommendation also from the city of Gaithersburg, although we haven't heard from them in this process this year. The idea being that once Watkins Mill Road opened all the way across 270 with the interchange, there would be more traffic that would be coming up and down Clopper in that section, and there's a need for better traffic management and operations in that section. We're not talking about a wholesale redo of Clopper Road, but with what's operating today, at least projected to operate, is not sufficient. Then the next priority is a typo. It should say Maryland 198, not 108, in Burtonsville. There has been a planning study going on for a very long time to widen Route 28 and 198 from Georgia Avenue all the way to Prince George's County. And several years ago, the section within Burtonsville Business District was sort of separated out as being really more important than the rest and sort of been a somewhat faster track. And the county is funding a parallel road in that section just to the north of it called the Burtonsville Access Road that goes by the elementary school and behind the other the buildings on the north side to improve circulation and access to the properties over there. And so that's a second priority. Again, it should say 198, not 108. The third priority is widening Frederick Road, Route 55, from where it ends now, where the 4-lane ends now in Germantown, just north of Boston, up to the historic center of Clarksburg. It doesn't go all the way to Stringtown Road, but part of the way up. The next one after that is River Road. This is a new project that the staffs are recommending adding, and the planning board and the executive both have as number 5, which is not widening River Road, but basically is the same kind of improvement that the state has just approved for Georgia Avenue in Montgomery Hills. It's for making it more ped bike friendly, adding some safety improvements, and this is basically we're going from West Bard down to Western Avenue. The sixth priority is also a new one, but it was identified as something to be studied in the Forest Glen plan that was recently adopted, which is to reconfigure the interchange at Georgia Avenue in the Beltway. It doesn't really change the Beltway at all, but it changes how Georgia Avenue passes below it. I unfortunately didn't bring a diagram of what a divergent diamond is, but basically it's a way of, maybe Dave could talk about it, it's a way of creating a safer way for traffic to go through that intersection on Georgia Avenue. There's a lot of problems now, and has been for years, for traffic, particularly in the PM, going northbound on Georgia Avenue, and you having the traffic going eastbound to northbound on that ramp, going basically in the same place as traffic going northbound and westbound, causes huge backups there. And this idea would alleviate that by a large degree. The next priority is one that's been in the CIP or in the priority letter forever, which is the interchange at Georgia Avenue and Norbeck Road. That went into the priority letter, actually went into design 25 years ago. And about a little under 20 years ago, it was suspended because of lack of funding. And then a few years ago, there were some intersection improvements which helped things a bit. But the problem with that is that although traffic is not as bad as it had been before that, it's a very pedestrian, bike unfriendly intersection. It's very wide. And the idea here is that the master plan has, and the original designs showed Route 28 as it comes from north of Leisure World, goes under Georgia Avenue, and then comes back to Norbeck Road, just beyond that little shopping center there, which then reduces the amount of traffic in the intersection itself by a large degree, and you could then maybe minimize that intersection more and have it more bike ped friendly. And then the last priority on this list is one that's been in our letter before, but also near the bottom. It is truly Maryland 108, and this is the bypass around the town of Laytonsville, and there's a letter in here from the town of Laytonsville asking that that be included in the letter. So again, between the two letters at least, for drafts, the only difference is the executive has accelerated the accelerated traffic signal modernization to the top of the list and keeps all the other priorities in the same ranking as the same order as the planning board's letter.
Thank you for that. So a lot to unpack in this. At this point, I'll lead by saying I'm inclined to support the executive's recommendations, and the reason primarily is the accelerated traffic signal modernization project leading the way, recognizing that 20% of fatal crashes occur at intersections. Nearly half of pedestrian and bicyclist incidents happen at intersections, and for everybody who complains about traffic on our current roads, there have been talks for a very long time about increasing the traffic flow, which could largely come from the resolution from it, and ease could come from this modernization. So I support that. I also just want to put on the record that our District 5 council member, District 6 council member, Councilmember Natalie Fana-Gonzalez requested Georgia Avenue.
Yeah.
Dr. Rowland?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just as you were talking, I remembered I have it. Do you all have the letter from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's another item to decide where do you want to put that in the priorities. The only thing I would add to what she's written is you notice in each of these priorities it says either design or construction or planning, and this would definitely be a planning one because we don't know what we would be getting yet. It has to go through what's called the development evaluation program at the state level. That'll take a couple of years, and then once that's funded, and then it might be in a position to ask for construction funds. But I don't have any
Director
I
Franklin.
could make a recommendation that if you wanted to consider combining 6 and 7 with Councilmember Fani-Gonzalez's recommendation, we could parse out in the description the major things we'd like to see the state pursue, because all of those are planning phase activities, all on 97, although some have a longer track record than others. But
well, I wasn't thinking of that so much as that one of the things in her letter is that her top priority is for Georgia Avenue from Forest Glen up to and through Wheaton CBD, and then if you were able to expand it further in terms of the ask, it would then go up to Glenmont, and then, or actually Glenmont or Olney, and then the third priority would be carried all the way up to Aspen Hill, to Glenmont, right, not Olney. So it's a couple part questions. Where do you put it in the letter, but also what is the extent of that study?
So a few different things there. I agree with adding it to number 6 because that is basically the same points of entry, right, or travel that she is referring to, at least starting at Georgia Avenue and 495, and then for the purposes of her request, it goes north. So I would include most of that into 6. But question about number 7. Last week when we had the CIP hearing, we heard from a number of residents from Leisure World who were more focused on Norbeck Road, less so Georgia Avenue, and the width of Norbeck and the access points from Leisure World and some of the new developments there. Is that captured in this item number 7, or should that be changed in some way?
One of the people who testified did recommend the interchange. The other two talked more about what you were saying, widening actually Norbeck Road all the way over to Layhill Road, which was also part of this Roaring 28-198 study, which has been around forever, but it's had a lower priority. And then I think the third speaker talked about really more like pet bike improvements solely within the section closest to Leisure World. So they basically said 3 related but different things.
So more specifically then, would item number 7, the Georgia Avenue Norbeck Road interchange, would that carry down to Norbeck and capture some of the requests?
Well, if you wanted, let's put it this way, if you wanted to have the widening and straightening of Norbeck Road all the way over to Layhill Road as to be something that's studied, that's it's closely related, but it's almost a separate item because it's they're both expensive. You could, if you wanted to combine them into one, you could, but they are two different projects in a way.
I wasn't aware of all that testimony from last week, but you could reframe number 7 to focus on 28, including Georgia Avenue. It's historically been referred to as 97. But now that the 198 study is also very, very old and the focus has moved to the east end, you could refocus number 7 on 28 between Lancaster Mill and the ICC Bridge if you'd like.
Sure. So what I'm inclined to do, and I'll defer to my colleagues, so I'm inclined to support the executive recommendation, and in between now and the time this gets to full council, I believe on Tuesday, I will speak with council members Fani Gonzalez and Councilmember Mink about the requests from them and their constituents regarding those two items.
Okay, so for now, we would leave it just as the interchange, but it could come back.
That's just my opinion. So, yes, you're talking about number 7? Yeah.
Number 7, right. What I heard in number 6, at least for now, I think, well, actually you haven't voted yet, but you were thinking in terms of number 6 being not just the interchange, but also the section going up to including Wheaton CBD.
I mean, that is, for all intents and purposes, the same area, right? Georgia Avenue starting at the Beltway going up to the Wheaton CBD. I recognize it's a mile or so in distance, but if we're talking about projects and trying to make that community, improve that community and make it safer, I would combine them, personally.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart. Thank you. You will come back. Thank you.
I agree with that, and I have a couple of points I want to make on the accelerated traffic signal modernization. Similar to the point I raised before, in the letter we talk about is the first sentence, focusing on pedestrian crossing configurations that meet today's needs. Again, would this be a place to emphasize the work on equity emphasis areas and reviewing that? I know I talked to, yes, go ahead. You want to
On that one, I wouldn't, but I hear DOT's point of view on this. You know, there are a lot of things in transportation which are local, and there are a lot of things in transportation which are regional. Transportation, by its nature, is mostly regional or sub-regional. And just because a transportation project is not in an equity emphasis area, that doesn't mean that folks who live in equity emphasis areas don't use it. And so something like the traffic signal system, that's something that everybody uses. And whether it's in an equity emphasis area or not, really doesn't make that much difference in terms of benefit, who benefits from it. Everybody benefits from it. I mean, some other issues that's in DOT's remit, such as residential resurfacing or street lighting on residential streets, that's a different story. That really is local, or even traffic calming is local. But something like the countywide signal system, I wouldn't say is something that is important to identify, to do it more in equity emphasis areas than not, because the bigger problems may not be in equity emphasis areas, and everybody uses them.
I think I was focusing because this also includes pedestrian crossings. Am I correct in that?
It does include that. I mean, those are all assessed when a traffic signal is reconstructed.
Yeah.
But the signals that need to be reconstructed kind of are where they are. So I'm not sure you would want to Dr. Orland's point, specify equity emphasis areas here, because the signals that are in the worst shape may or may not be in those locations. And there is a holistic assessment that goes on with each of them when they're dealt with.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for that.
I'm drawing the distinction between Vision Zero. A lot of these small Vision Zero projects are very local.
Yes.
Right. So that's definitely the equity emphasis idea. There is really good to add.
That is very helpful. And I agree with Council President on items 6 and 7, and I think if we rework item 6, it would be helpful in the body of the letter to talk about and thank again for the funding we've gotten from the Montgomery Hills area, and really seeing this as an extension on Georgia Avenue.
Good one. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the county executive's listing with the inclusion, the Georgia Avenue on 6 and 7, and reworking those, reworking 6 and looking at 7. I do just want to touch on Clopper Road. my prior office was right at that corner of Clapper and Watkins Mill, and while we worked very hard to get the interchange, we're very happy to have the interchange, everybody knew that it would have an impact on Clapper Road, and so it's been open now for, has it been 2 years, maybe a year and a half? And so I think that project needs to move forward soon. But I agree with the signal modernization as one.
Very good. So I think we're all in agreement about the agreeing to the executive priorities.
And can we rename Clapper Road as John Denver Highway, since Take Me Home Country Roads is based on Clapper Road?
There you go.
The final category may be the most difficult. It's the basically the Opportunity Lanes program under what's called the Interstate Program section. There are two drafts, the planning boards and the executives, and they have different emphases. The planning board's version assumes carrying forward with phase one, which is widening the American Legion Bridge, the western section of the Beltway, up the west spur of 270, and up to and all the way up to Frederick. Phase one south, the part that's gone through planning is approved by the federal government, goes only up as far north as I-370, and phase one north is, I think, underway or about to go underway, which is the planning north up to Frederick. The planning board's letter still raises some of the same concerns that the county has had for years, which is none of us like to see the phase one being separated into a south and north, because there can be a problem if south is finished and then there'll be some backups there, particularly at 370 area, until phase one north is done. And so the preference had been early on that both of them be done at the same time, although at this point if phase one south were delayed, it means there's no improvement there for probably 3 or 4 more years beyond what it would otherwise be. So we're talking about sometime in the 2030s. There's also the planning board's letter explicitly mentions that the county is totally opposed to any widening of the Beltway east of 270 over through North Bethesda or the northern part of Bethesda and Silver Spring. It also refers to several of the items that the state has promised and not yet delivered on, or at least put an MOU, such as the new bus depot at Metropolitan Grove, the increased bus bays at Shady Grove, and the increased park and ride at Montgomery Mall Transit Center, and then some other aspects like that. The executive's letter really takes things further back and says this is a time to revisit the entire project and to see whether or not it's something that needs to be done, but how it's done and how it would be funded is something that they would, the executive's version would want to revisit. These are really two fundamentally different points of view on this project, and this frankly would be the time for this council to decide where it's at on this. So it's a difficult decision, and I don't have any recommended language because they're really two different points of view on this. I tend to agree more with the planning board's version of it, but that's not as important, of course, as what you all decide. And again, at the end of the day, what you want to write in this letter is something the executive can agree to. So I think the best way to spend the time on this item today would be to express your own feelings about where things stand, or where they should stand with this phase one project. I think we can dispense with phase two, but for phase one, and what you might like to see in the letter without actually wordsmithing it, and then see if there's something between now and when this comes to council where the executive and committee can agree.
Director Conklin?
I think I get an author credit on both versions of this from different points in time, but with the incoming new administration, we thought it was an opportunity to take a step back from the specific issues and grievances that might have been expressed about the previous approaches to the project, and try to establish a point of let's have a full conversation about how this project should proceed, rather than the specific issues or concerns we had with the previous proposal. That's why it's a change in the tone and approach in the executive's draft than the previous version, which the executive had also participated in, but that was very specific to what the Hogan administration had been working hard to advance at the time. That said, there's nothing wrong with the specific details that are called out in that writing. about needing to confirm minimum levels of support for transit at the facilities that the state had committed to build, and I'll go further than Dr. Orland, had committed in writing to the Transportation Planning Board and to the council at the time those votes were happening, that those things are followed through with, and to highlight the opportunities for the state with future connections at Dorsey Mill or Little Seneca Parkway and other things that are related to 270. But that's why it's such a different approach, is there's a different audience on the other end of the letter than we had for the last 8 years.
If I can add one more thing. The original, and this has less to do with substance than timing, the original hope was that the committee would make a recommendation today, at least ideas of where it wanted to go, and we could work out something in the next week and bring it all to the full council next Tuesday, the 7th, for conclusion. I'm told by our clerk that the 7th agenda is already more or less pretty packed, which means it's likely not going to happen on the 7th. And this is really up to you. I'm not going to be around here after the 7th for about a month with my back surgery. So if it were to come back and I were to staff it, we were talking about something more like the mid-March before it came back, which is a plus and a minus. I mean, maybe the plus might be that I'm not here, but another plus is you have more time to actually figure this out. And given that we're probably not going to have an effect on the approved FY23, final FY23 28 CTP anyway, because it's probably about to come out, I'd still be in plenty of time for the next CTP. And I think the law is that April, yeah. So it has to be provided by April.
And just to be clear, I have to try to make sure we have consensus with the executive on your recommended changes before the letter can be
so we give more
executed.
time for all of that to happen. But I didn't want to take any more committee time after today to go into this, because you have other items coming before you, the CIP and both for WSSC and transportation and other things.
So thank you for sharing the dates for which this actually needs to be approved. And I also appreciate the retrospective of how we got here and the tone and tenor of some of those conversations and where we need to go. I started this session stating that this letter is a priority letter for funding we need from the state for big transportation projects. I do not view this letter as a policy debate. I view it as an ask for resources. And the reality is, our new governor has been governor for less than 2 weeks. Last week, he nominated a new transportation secretary, and there have been many conversations with colleagues, amongst the executive branch, and others in the state about the managed lane project. And it would be my preference that we have those conversations with the brand new governor and the incoming transportation secretary aside from this request for funding. Because as even the county executive has noted publicly, his conversations have been thoughtful about the proposal that the county, that the former governor made. This governor is on record saying he did not support the former governor's proposal in full and is looking to make it better, and I take him at his word. And I think the best place for those conversations are with the new leaders who have yet to be confirmed. And so, in my estimation, the preliminary conversations are working. The governor is starting on the right foot. He understands that changes need to be made. And I would rather focus this document on the request for hundreds of millions of dollars that we need from the state to improve our current transportation network, and that we work together in partnership and collaboration on moving us forward in a holistic in a holistic way. And so what I would prefer this section to be is a pledge of ongoing, conversation with the governor and his team to improve regional transportation in a holistic way. And essentially we could wordsmith, whether this comes on the agenda next Tuesday or whether it comes in weeks ahead, emphasize the need for continued collaboration and communication, because I believe it will be helpful to all of us. Because again, I am taking the governor at his word that the former governor's proposal needed improvement, and he has said that. And so let's have those conversations in the appropriate manner, in the appropriate location, and keep this letter to the high-level ask of requesting hundreds of millions of dollars. But I do have one clarifying question for Director Conklin, though. In the county executive's letter, I was going to say very strongly, we could debate whether it's very strongly, but it questions the managed lane project, pushes back against it, and states alternatives that have been stated before, namely the use of the ICC. But at the end of one of the third paragraph, it says, "We look forward to reaching agreement with MDOT for local transit funding as required by the Board of Public Works P3 approval." So what confuses me is the questioning of the project, which in itself doesn't, I understand, but then asking for money from the project should it move forward. So what is the position that the county executive is actually taking in this document?
In my conversations with the county executive, of course, you'll have to talk to him to get his position directly, but I think he's expressing much the same sentiment you have, that this is the opportunity to take a step back and fully assess what needs to be done in this quarter and the best way to do it. The Board of Public Works, in authorizing the P3, did require that the P3 provide a funding contribution to transit. That had been further documented with the Transportation Planning Board and in correspondence to the council. So, I mean, the view has been through the whole time that should the project advance, notwithstanding the concerns of the executives and other stakeholders in the project, those commitments need to be met.
Yeah.
And according to the planning board letter, or the version of the letter, my understanding is that it states that there's been no progress on those commitments. Is that a fair
I
read?
have had back and forth with Secretary's office staff up through this transition period. That all went on hold indefinitely when the former secretary announced that they were not going to authorize the board, or not going to transmit the contract to the Board of Public Works in the Hogan term. So that is suspended, but there had not been substantive progress in many months leading up to that on firming up those commitments.
So no progress has been made. And I think what you just emphasized, Director Conklin, is exactly why the tone needs to be correct, in that it needs to be one of encouraging conversation, particularly if it has stalled over the last number of months, which is understandable. The governor was leaving. Many staff members, including secretaries, have left over the last number of weeks and months, but we are hitting a reset. Now is a time for a reset, and I think we need to engage in a manner different than as is communicated in this letter. And what I will do is offer some suggestions to Dr. Orland and share with my colleagues here, and share with clearly the county executive. But if we want to hit a reset, the tone of this letter needs to be correct.
That's the intention of what's written, so if it's
Okay.
not accomplishing that, then your thoughts are welcome.
Could I just ask for a point of clarification? Because I think there are two drafts of a letter in our packet. Are we looking at page circle 19 or page circle 29 as the final draft we should be working off of?
Circle 29 is the executive's
Right. So
draft.
I just
And I'm looking at 19, but it's okay.
No. I think the points are probably very
Yes.
similar. The language is different on what was on in the packet on Circle 19. I made the same mistake myself last night late looking at this. But I agree with the council president. I do believe the sentiment and the direction we're taking, I agree with, but I want to make sure that when we do go back and the council president looks at the language, that we're starting in the correct place, because I agree with the position you're taking, and I thank you for taking on that task of doing that. So I just wanted to
Circle
clarify.
29 was our attempt at the reset language, not the airing of previous grievances
Yes.
language.
Appreciate that.
Great.
I did both. My Circle 29 has a big thing, said, see Circle 19. So a little bit of both. Thank you, President Glass, and I appreciate the sentiment of this is not a policy letter, it is stating our priorities, which I think does kind of move into policy, but the idea that this project has been in discussion for a very, very long time, and we've been a committee for an hour and a half now. So and with the new council, so I know that it's going to take time for us to come to an agreement. So I think that I'm intrigued by by the proposal that this is a pledge of ongoing communication, ongoing dialogue. I appreciate that, and I'm interested in seeing the language. Just a couple things, because we don't know how this is going to move forward with the county executive. We don't know how it's going to move forward with the full council. So I just wanted to mention a few things. I think that as our transportation priorities letter, I would like to see a commitment to whatever the language is, that we have to increase capacity, transportation capacity on the I-270 corridor. And my concern about taking a pause or the specific languages, several times it's been mentioned today that there is a very long list of projects, not only from the county but statewide, and limited resources. So if the county decides to take a pause on the I-270 corridor, we could the pause could be a very long pause, and we don't circle back to actually coming up with solutions for I-270. So I think that I would want to express that while our new governor and new Secretary of Transportation is reviewing the project, we want to make it very clear that something has to be done on the I-270 corridor and the American Legion Bridge. I don't think that there's a lot of, well, of course there's discord out there, but I think there's general consensus that something needs to happen with the American Legion Bridge, and I would like to see that included and stated. Those are the big issues. Smaller issues, but important. The comment about solutions on I-270 should be within the walls of I-270. That is a concern for me for phase 2 of the I-270 corridor, because it's, we're talking about going from, is it 16 lanes to 4 lanes? And so I think those words caused me a little heartburn. And then the issue of the Circle 19, the planning board goes into the question of the ICC alternative. That I wouldn't want to see that brought back up again. That solution may be a solution for 495, but it's not a solution for I-270, and I think that we shouldn't resurrect that.
I think that was the point of that. I think it was as an alternative to 495 as opposed to an alternative to 270. Maybe it doesn't read that way.
Yeah, and I think that's competing goals there, because bringing more traffic onto I-270 at that point in time, I don't think would work.
Yeah, the argument last council was that, at least for the section east of 270, the ICC provided a plausible alternative to widening the Beltway through Silver Spring. In fact, a lot of the folks who supported the 270 widening didn't support the widening of the Beltway. Nobody did, and they did support the ICC as a plausible alternative for that.
My guess is that they didn't live on the I-270 corridor, but that's for another day.
It was in combination with I-270 improvements. It wasn't
Right.
absent those improvements.
Right.
I understand that. So that's where but thank you for that.
Could I suggest that if this language in this section is more broad, more general, and more conversation, that one of the things we shouldn't lose track of is something Ms. Balcom mentioned earlier, which was that there's been a commitment for state funding for $360 million over time, $60 million soon and $300 million over time, as well as for 3 major transit improvements: the park and ride at Montgomery Mall, the bus bays at Shady Grove, and the bus depot. And whether or not there are toll lanes, I think my recommendation is that we include those prior commitments as a minimum in the letter. We don't lose that. Otherwise, it calls into question really our own CIP, particularly with regards to the 355 Central. We won't be able to build it if we don't have money from somewhere, whether it's coming from tolls or coming from.
Thank you. I meant to circle back to that. I don't think that we can count on the funding from the opportunity lanes in the BRT section if we're moving in this direction. Thank you.
And that was part of the question, not asked as specifically as that, about questioning the program and the project, but allocating funds from the project into other areas. So right. So what I will do is I'll work with staff. I'll work with you, Dr. Orland, and Director Conklin, and see what is amenable between the executive and the council. That again sets us off on a good footing with this new governor and the incoming transportation secretary. Does that work? Okay, great.
Notwithstanding Dr. Orland's absence after the 7th, I think it would be unrealistic to get the executive's concurrence on all of these changes that aren't yet fleshed out by next Tuesday. So if you could take that into your planning consideration, that'd be
Yes,
appreciated.
72-hour turnaround not working for you. I hear you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's it for that item. And then the final item for this morning is a briefing by Michael Goldman and Charlie Scott on the general manager's proposed FY24 budget for WMATA.
And
They're
Mr.
here.
Scott
They're here.
is joining us, and Mr. Goldman is joining us. Welcome, gentlemen.
Morning, thank you.
Good morning. If you want to hit the button in front of you, one of the buttons, but not that one.
The one
Right
one
below.
closest to the mic.
How about that button?
That
Perfect.
button.
All right, for the record, Charlie Scott, Government Relations Officer for WMATA. So Chairman Glass, Council Members Balcom, Stewart, thank you for the opportunity to be here to share with you some updates from our General Manager's proposed budget, also some other highlights of recent progress at Metro. And then the last slide of my presentation is going to be a couple discussion points for fair discussions considerations here from Montgomery County. And then our former board member and new alternate board member, Michael Goldman, will be sharing some of his thoughts in terms of local considerations within our FY24 budget. So briefly, a couple updates. We continue to work closely with the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission on our return to service plan for the 7000 series rail cars. Good news is that we are continuing to get more and more rail cars back into service as a result of those ongoing negotiations. So you may have seen last week we did announce improved service across the system coming in February. Here on the red line, that means that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll be improving service actually during the midday. So the current 8-minute frequency during peak will actually continue from 6 a.m. all the way through 9 p.m. Those 3 solid days of the week. What we're seeing, not surprisingly, is that we do still have peak demand. So peak hour service is more crowded than the rest of the day, but as a result of the telework and everything we've seen with the pandemic, we don't have nearly the same level of peak hour demand that we had pre-COVID. And again, one of the good results from having improved service, improved customer communications is also improved customer satisfaction. So recently, you'll be seeing in the next couple weeks our latest scorecard, again showing improved customer satisfaction. From summer to fall, it improved about 5 points on both rail and bus, and then again from fall to winter, we've seen another improvement by about 5% on both the rail and bus systems. Another thing we're working closely with Montgomery County on, and actually region-wide, is our Better Bus initiative. So believe it or not, Metro Bus is turning 50 later this week. So February 4th is the 50th anniversary of Metro Bus across the region. Last year we launched an initiative to relook at where we are running the bus system across the region. Here locally, Ride On also initiated their own Ride On Reimagined study just before we kicked off our study. So we are here working very closely with Ride On as we survey the customers, look at the routes, and determine what's the best area to be running service in the future. So again, all the slides you have in your packet, I will just highlight a couple points from these slides, and if you have any questions as I'm going through these, please feel free to ask those questions. On this slide, I think what's new is our effort from, directed by our board to look at simplifying our fare structure and having a more equitable fare structure. I think it's no secret that WMATA has one of the most complex fare structures in the country. You'll see people studying our fare tables as they arrive to the stations to try to figure out how much they need to load onto their Smart Trip card. So definitely looking to simplify that fare structure. And then also many other systems around the country have benefits and products for lower income residents. That is not something we've done here in this region. I've actually had the pleasure of working with the District of Columbia on a trial to look at low income fares, and we're pleased to be able to introduce a low income fare proposal in the FY24 budget. Skip it, go on. On this slide, I do want to highlight, not for this coming year, but really where we look going into FY25. If you look at the almost the bottom line there, federal relief, Metro and all transit systems across the country received funding to maintain service, keep our employees on the payrolls, and to keep providing essential service to the public. Those funds will be depleted with our FY24 budget, assuming approval of our recommended budget. So that means that going into FY25, we don't have any more federal relief funding. So all told, that results in a funding gap on the order of $700 million, looking at FY25. So, we have a balanced budget proposal for FY24, but just kind of the early warning that as we look a year from now, as we're debating the FY25 budget, it's a major challenge that we as a region will need to face. So again, looking, go on to the next one, looking at the specific areas where we're providing service in FY24. Again, as I mentioned, the where we're seeing demand for service is different now than pre-COVID. So we are trying to increase service where we can during the off-peak times. And looking at where we're delivering the rail service, we really looked at trying to, within our budget constraints, improve service where it's going to benefit the most customers. So you see here, we've done an analysis of how this new service proposal impacts our riders. We do believe that we will increase trips about 3%. 8% would be negatively impacted by the service proposal, and 49% would be positively impacted. So we're definitely trying to balance all the competing demands when we come up with our service proposal. And then the next slide goes over exactly what the service would look like. Again, looking at both bus and rail, and then Metro Access, there's no change, of course, for that service. We are trying to improve the number of 12-minute and 20-minute frequency lines across the system. We have a couple proposals in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. But again, we're really focusing on the Better Bus Network before we launch extensive service changes on the bus side. And then on the rail side, again, here locally, I think most of the focus is on the red line, but of course many riders do transfer to other lines across the system. But again, looking at where we're delivering the service, 6-minute all-day service on the red line is good service, a very good service, so we're pleased to be able to put that into the budget. And then just slightly better service during the peak hours, recognizing that that's where we expect to see some crowding, so slightly more frequent service during the peak hours. And then I think getting into the fare simplification. This is an effort. So basically our board asked staff to come up with a mechanism to increase ridership, increase revenue, and make the fares more simple. It's not easy to have all those competing levers and to be able to come up with a proposal that achieves all of them. But our staff, we have some smart people working at Metro, so they were able to come up with this fare proposal that does achieve all of those 3 goals. So what we're looking at would be simplifying by eliminating the off-peak and peak. So we would just have one fare throughout the day. We would retain the late night and weekend $2 flat fare. The peak hour, or I'm sorry, the regular Metro Rail fare just to board and go a couple miles would actually go down by 25 cents to match what we do on Metro Bus. And then the max fare would go up to $6.50 from $6. So again, in terms of who's paying more, obviously people riding the longest distance would go up from either $6 to $6.50, or if they're currently riding off-peak, then they would be going up from the $3.85 to the $6.50. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are focused on equity and looking at lower income residents and their ability to pay to ride the system. So we are introducing the concept of a low income fare product. So that would be half off the prevailing bus or rail fare at that time. Going into the capital program, nothing too new. This is just a continuation of our capital program. So again, we structure it by looking at our total needs over the next 10 years. We boil that down into a 6-year capital improvement program, very similar to how Maryland DOT operates their system. And then that boils down to a 1-year capital budget. Capital budget for next year is about $2.2 billion. $2 billion of that is the actual delivery of projects, and about $175 million is debt service payments. Keep going. This isn't. So again, as I mentioned, that's what it looks like as a funding outlook for the next year, 6 years. Totals there. And again, this is getting into what we do with that $2 billion budget. We are again focused on replacing our legacy rail cars. Last year, Hitachi broke ground for a new assembly plant up in Hagerstown. So we are designing and hope to soon be manufacturing the 8000 series rail cars. Continuing track work, facilities, everything it takes to keep the bus and the rail network running smoothly. In terms of the outlook for where we are today and how this is going to work, we expect our board to authorize the public comment on the budget. The public hearings will be coming up in the February to early March timeframe. Our board will continue their own deliberations on the budget, and we anticipate board adoption of the budget in April. And then we're on the same fiscal year as the county, July 1 fiscal year. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a couple things for the council to consider. The first one was one that we looked at last year as the council was deliberating the fare to charge on ride-on, and there's always an effort usually to try to, whenever possible, have similar treatments for Metro Bus and Metro and ride-on fares in the county. At the time, the county, when they brought back fares, they decreased the fare to $1. but they did not choose to match what we were doing in terms of the bus to rail and rail to bus discount. So right now, if you're on Metrobus, you pay your fare, and then that full $2 becomes a credit when you ride on Metro Rail. Vice versa, if you're on Metro Rail, then you get a $2 credit onto your Metro bus fare. So right now, the county is still at 50 cents, which was what we all were at previously as the discount. So one thing the county may want to consider would be whether to increase that 50-cent transfer discount to the full $1 of the ride-on fare. And then the other option that the county could look at, again, this is of course pending board approval, but we are again looking at a low-income fare product. So the question would be whether a ride-on would want to honor that low-income fare and provide half off the ride-on fare, if that's something that our board adopts as well. So a couple considerations for the council there.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Goldman?
Thank you, Mr. Scott. May I suggest, President Glass, that we hold questions until I finish what I'll attempt to do, which is to sort of focus in on the issues of concern to the county and perhaps some solutions. But just by way of background, I guess, for the benefit of Councilmember Balcom and Councilmember Stewart, a little bit about me. So I serve, as Mr. Scott pointed out, as the Montgomery County alternate on the Metro Board. I'm appointed by the county executive for a term, and as an alternate, that means I serve for one of the principal directors, in this case, the Secretary of Transportation, when he cannot attend a board meeting. For your background, there's actually 8 voting directors, 2 from Maryland, 2 from district, 2 from Virginia, and 2 from the federal government. So when the Secretary of Transportation can't make a meeting, they tap me on the shoulder and I go to sit in for him. And from your prior discussion, just so you'll know, Mr. Wiedefeld, Paul Wiedefeld, is, since his appointment last Thursday, is now the acting secretary. So he's actually on board and serving pending confirmation by the state senate. And we've had conversations about my responsibilities as his alternate and some other issues as well over the past few days. So let me just talk a little bit about some of the issues of focus to the county, some of the pluses and minuses in the general manager's proposal that will affect the county. But I do want to note before getting into that, that ridership and as a result of that passenger revenue is still below pre-COVID levels, especially for Metro Rail, which I think the last time I looked is at about 50 or 55% of pre-COVID levels. Bus is higher, but rail is still at about 50%. So what that means is that in one of the slides that are in the package, there's a $2.3 billion operating budget, but passenger revenue only accounts for a little over 508 million of Metro's resources. There's another 1.2 billion, which are a form of subsidies, which come from the state of Maryland, District of Columbia, as well as the jurisdictions in Virginia. And the gap in the budget between the 1.2 and 1.5, 1.7, and the 2.3 billion is made up of the federal COVID aid package money that is currently being provided by the federal government, and which Mr. Scott pointed out will evaporate at the end of this FY24 budget, which will start on July 1. So that gives you a big sense of the big picture and sort of the big hole that's there for the next fiscal year after this one that we're talking about right now. So what does the budget do for Montgomery County? On the plus side, we have Red Line service remains where it is with modest improvements in headways, as Mr. Scott pointed out. Basically now, because of the problems with the 7,000 rail cars, there's a reduced size of the fleet. So we're really running at about a 10-minute headway. And what the headway is the distance between trains. And so we're running at about a 10-minute headway on the Red Line under this proposed budget, with more 7,000 series cars coming back into service. That will be reduced to 6-minute headways most of the day, 5 minutes during the morning and afternoon and evening peak, and after 9:30 it would be at 10 o'clock. There were no Red Line turnbacks. As you'll know, this was a big issue a couple years ago. Former chairs of this committee, Roger Berliner and Tom Hucker, pushed very hard with me for changes in that board policy, and we ended the red line turnbacks. So all red line trains go from Glenmont on the east side, all the way through downtown, all the way out to Shady Grove on the west side. And these additional services that Mr. Scott referred to in these Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which are now the peak days of the week. People seem to like to take off more on Mondays and Fridays under the new regime we have out there in the real world. And so those will also operate throughout the whole red line from Glenmont on the east through Shady Grove on the west. Metrobus, no changes in much for best routes for the county in this proposed budget. All those changes weight the bus realignment study, the Better Bus initiative that Charlie referred to. There's no across-the-board fare increases, as Charlie pointed out. But on the minus side, there are some fare increases that do have an impact on a large group of riders, especially in this county, as well as in places like Fairfax and Loudoun County. So, as Charlie pointed out, the maximum rail fare will go from $6 to $6.50, impacting riders going from, say, Shady Grove to Metro Center, which is those kind of long-haul routes impacted. It's an 18-mile trip. But it also will affect routes on the east side, Silver Spring to downtown or Silver Spring to Reagan National. Those would all be subject to this 50-cent increase from $6 to $6.50. More troublesome is that while peak off-peak fare difference being eliminated is generally a good thing, riders traveling at these off-peak periods will be paying significantly higher fares. They would be going from a $3.85 max today, if you're traveling 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, to the $6.50 maximum. So that's a 70% fare increase if something is not done to amend that and to change that. This is an unfortunate part of the proposal, which I think is particularly unfair, since, as Charlie pointed out, short-haul rail customers will get a fare reductions. Those in peak periods will get a reduction going down from what they pay $2.25 now to $2. So I think there's about 4 or 5 issues that the committee and the council generally, with the executive, may want to address. One is the max fare issue, whether you would oppose that in some formal way. Second is some relief for riders during these off-peak periods who would be subject to this increase going from $3.85 to potentially $6.50. One possible solution that I've suggested and brought forth is the idea of maybe a fare cap, is to say that all of these O&D routings, the fare increase next year will not be more than 10% of what people are paying currently on these O&D itineraries. So it's a way to, keep the fare increase in a more modest sense than the 50, 60, or 70% increases for a lot of these trips that a staff report suggests would happen if no changes are made. Now, Director Conklin may have some other ideas to address this kind of fare problem for the off-peak riders, because he and I have had some conversations. No red line turnbacks, as I pointed out. I guess the issue for the committee is whether any better service than the current service is warranted. Before COVID, we were basically at headways of about 4 minutes on the red line. Under this proposal, it would be 6 minutes, better than it is today because of the limitations on the 7,000 rail cars. But whether the council thinks that going back to pre-COVID headways is appropriate. My own view is that in light of the sort of pre-COVID levels of where rail riders are, that's probably not appropriate at this point. There are some crowdings Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in peak hours, which I think the general manager's proposal will address. On Metrobus, an issue that always comes up in any of these budgets, or whether there's any need for improvement in Metrobus routes that customers feel are too much overcrowding, poor service in terms of time before buses, the actual routing itself. So that's an issue which isn't addressed. In the general manager's proposal, there's no changes to county Metrobus issues in this budget. And finally, while it's not a budget issue, I do want to point out that there are traditionally been a number of low, moderate housing projects on Metro rail station sites that the county has looked at. You know, those that come to mind, the big ones are Grosvenor, Forest Glen, Shady Grove, Rockville, and Twinbrook are all sites that come to mind, you know, where there's big Metro properties, mainly their parking lots now, and the issue that county faces is whether any of these sites are ones that they would want to pursue affordable housing projects on those sites. One of the issues that always comes up there is the replacement of parking lots. Since traditionally the Metro policy has been, well, yeah, you can build a lot of low and moderate housing here, but we'd like to see the same number of parking lots, which means you have to build a big garage, and that runs up the cost for the developer. The planning board had looked on some options and some alternatives from that a year or two ago. I don't know where those discussions stand at this particular point in time. Finally, as Charlie pointed out, the board has now approved sending this budget to hearings. The public hearings will be scheduled in the second week in March of this year. There'll be sites in each of the jurisdictions, so there'll be a site somewhere in Maryland, whether it be in Montgomery or Prince George's County has not been determined as yet. And then, as Charlie points out, after the public hearing docket is completed, then the board will go back into deliberations on the budget and hopefully complete their deliberations and vote on the budget as amended in late April, early May at the latest, so that the budget can go into effect July 1, 2023. I think that's where we are, and we'll be open to any questions or comments that you might have.
Sure. Well, thank you both for the presentation, and Mr. Scott and Mr. Goldman, and appreciate you also sharing the timeline for the budget, recognizing that it might seem very early now, being at the end of January, but as these conversations continue moving forward, there will be more finality as we get to April. So having these conversations on the front end and being early is better. And so I appreciate you both engaging and wanting to talk with us about this. You know, since I was looking at the timeline for Metro itself, right, and when it was created in the mid 70s and it came to Montgomery County in the late 70s, and so it is middle-aged, right? As am I, today being my birthday. So Metro and I might be the same age, right? But the reason I share that is because we're still trying to figure out what it is. And is it a transportation network for an urban core? Is it a transportation network for those living in the inner suburbs or outer suburbs to come into the city or somewhere else along those lines? And I think that's the difficulty here. And I say that as someone 40 plus years ago growing up on Long Island who took the Long Island Railroad, which knew what it was. It was purely a commuter rail that funneled people into New York City, where then you took the subway to get elsewhere. And so this is a combination system, and thus we're going through these growing pains. The fare changes. What is the ridership for Montgomery County? Do you have the data for how it will most affect our ridership here between morning peak or what currently is peak, PM, afternoon, weekends, those breakdowns?
I don't have those specific breakdowns, but
Okay.
I can see what we can develop.
Okay. Yeah, right. Just trying to figure out how it would impact, because I think you had a slide saying there will be 3% new ridership, 8% would be adversely impacted, and then the rest are somewhat neutral. So just trying to figure out what the ridership, how that affects ridership here.
Right, and that was actually more from the service patterns.
Okay.
Right? So we're actually increasing Green Line service towards Branch Avenue. So those considerations were more looking at where we are proposing to deliver the service.
And so I would ask that you run that same algorithm, whatever it might be, analysis to figure out how the price changes might affect our ridership here. And the only other overarching thought I have is I know that DC, the district, is dealing with office vacancies. right, in their downtown areas. And Mayor Bowser has very publicly stated the need for the federal government to come back in person, the need to retrofit some of those vacant office spaces into residential. And so the concern I have is that having a fare structure that increases the cost to get down into the DC central business districts might further disincentivize the revitalization or the return to work there. And so just trying to reconcile that, if we want more people to take transit and not drive down there, but ultimately, in the district's best interest, they want people to go down there, how best we accommodate that. And so increasing the fares, I'm not quite sure, gets us in that direction. But the real last clarifying question, while increased fares, while the maximum fares go to $6.50, and that would impact Shady Grove and Glenmont, is the same true for the endpoints on all the other lines aside from Dulles? Does Vienna or Huntington or Greenbelt also have that same $6.50 max?
Yes, I mean, so
Okay.
it's a mileage-based fare system. So obviously depends on how far you're going from the ends of the line. But yes,
Okay.
as you get towards the core, yeah, you'll meet that max fare.
Yeah, the only thing I would add on that is that on the off-peak fare increases, the staff did a study recently identifying the top 50 O&D city pairs that would be impacted. And of those top 50, probably about 15 or 20 were Red Line riders in Montgomery County, Shady Grove to downtown, Shady Grove to DCA, Silver Spring, and Forest Glen down. Of that list of 50, there was only one route from long-haul commuting route from Virginia that was there, Vienna to Smithsonian. So the implication is that a lot of the riders impacted by the fare increase, the long-haul fare increase, are going to be county riders who are using the Red Line, although apparently, people, a smaller number coming in from the Virginia suburbs to downtown will be affected as well.
Was there any rationale or any additional information regarding that analysis?
The only thing I would share, I think that was an FY22 analysis. Since then, in November, we did open Silver Line Phase 2. So I think once you see that opening, you'll see many more riders from Loudoun and outer Fairfax also having longer distance rail trips.
So perhaps just because there were fewer stops or stations in that catch area.
Right.
Now that,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart?
Great. Well, thank you so much for this. Council President and Chair Glass kind of hit upon some of the main topics. I'll just say, as someone who grew up in Brooklyn, New York, you're never going to make a fare system structure as simple as the one I grew up with, but I appreciate you moving towards that. I would also like to see maybe a breakdown more on the numbers. Ms. Goldman, you said there's going to be about a 70% fare increase for some folks, and if we had more information on who those are, I'm glad to see you're rolling out the pilot project for those commuters who are lower income. But being able to dig into that and see what that Venn diagram is, I think, is really important. We know in the past when Metro service has been cut or things have it impacts people in the service industries and other folks who tend to be on the lower end of income. So that analysis would be great. The other thing is, and I'll just put on my regional hat as the COG board chair, this year I very much see this as a regional issue, not just your budget, but the issues with the Safety Commission and working with them, as well as Council President Glass talked about, the federal government. This is an issue not just for DC, but for our region. As we look at really trying to understand what the federal government's going to do regarding its telework policy. And so I think regionally here in Montgomery County, because we have so many of those employees who are commuting into the district, as well as just looking overall at the economic health of our region, working together on that. I look forward to doing that. And Mr. Scott, I need to sign up with my new email to get your emails updating on service service because as mayor in Tacoma Park, I found them incredibly useful. So thank you for being here today.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks. You just reminded me about those because I used to get those too, and I don't anymore. So I need to get those alerts.
You should both be on the list.
Yeah.
I just updated it recently, so,
Okay,
so
great.
hopefully you and your offices are receiving those.
Thanks. As Councilmember Stewart talked about the impact of the federal government telework policies, I think we're certainly in a time of transition, and we recently had a demographic presentation looking at the percent of people who are teleworking. I think it was 37% currently. So do we know, ridership's down roughly 50%. Do we know why specifically? I know that anecdotally we know that people are teleworking. Are more people driving in? Are more people parking? Do we know why the ridership has gone down so much?
I think it's primarily the increase in telework. I mean, pre-COVID, about 35% of our peak hour riders were federal employees, and I think as we've seen, the federal government has not come back in the same numbers that even some of the private sector employers have come back, and even on the private sector side, they're not back in the office, nearly what they were pre-COVID. So, and again, that is a reality that we're facing. So we do try to align our service to meet that new reality. And again, as Councilmember Stewart, mentioned, I mean, that's a reality that this region is going to have to address.
Sure, and we have conflicting priorities. I mean, it's better for the transportation system to have fewer commuters. However, we need to make sure that WMATA is robust and whole. And at the same time, we have to make sure that our downtowns, our town centers are robust. So I think we're in an era of uncertainty as to how this is going to play out. And I think that's really important for your out-year budget scenarios. I think that's important. I'm curious about the lower fares, the reduced fares for individuals with lower socioeconomic means. And so you're looking at the SNAP program as a way to do that. What about people that don't have children and aren't in that program? I mean, is that for everyone, or?
Right. So SNAP eligibility ranges based on your household
Sure,
size.
of course.
So it is, I mean, you could be a single person
Right.
and eligible for SNAP. So that is, we're trying to launch this in a few months. So I think our directive is to, look at something that is universally accepted across the region. So SNAP is a low-income program that's, every jurisdiction that we serve has SNAP eligible residents. Not to say that our board may not look in the future at expanding eligibility or looking at other local programs, but we know that SNAP is something that is universal across the region. So.
And logistically, how will it work? Do they purchase fare cards through a different system? How is that functionally going to work?
Well, I'm actually part of the team working on this. So we are looking at actually, and none of this is set in stone yet, but we're looking at if we could actually load the product onto someone's existing SmartChip card. So looking at the different technology solutions that SmartChip does enable. It doesn't have all functionality that we would love for SmartChip to have, but that's what we're looking at is could we have people enroll and then we would activate it on their SmartChip card, and then the next time that they tap on the bus or rail system, it auto loads the fare product onto their card. So
Yeah, I think that
more to be determined. I don't want to get ahead of my staff, but again, it's in development as we speak. We're trying to be ready in the event the board approves it in April.
Yeah, and I just think ease of use and not having a barrier to getting a theoretical barrier to getting into the system. I think appreciate that.
I would just note that the Metro has had a long-standing program of 50% reduced fares for senior citizens, as well as there are fare programs for school children. Both the district subsidizes so that their children essentially, Metro serves as the school bus for the District of Columbia, and the council has passed a similar program for school students in Montgomery County Public Schools.
Okay, thanks. And I think that if this rolls out, as it rolls out, to keep track of geographically where these programs are most used, I think that will be important to looking at the geographic impact of the fare increases, et cetera.
And actually, if I can make one request, again, I can't assume that the board will approve the low-income fare program, but if that does get approved, any assistance from you and the county in terms of promoting that to the eligible population, we would greatly appreciate.
Her first T&E meeting, and she's already talking about free and reduced fares. Thank you for the birthday gift. So, so back to that point, and I had taken a note where Mr. Scott, you were talking about the transfer balance, right? And so that WMATA has a balance transfer from Metro Bus over to Metro Rail, and you had openly asked whether or not the county wants to consider something to that effect as well. But adding to the complicated math and pocketbook mathematics, since our ride-on is only $1, the differential, right, is a little less than it might seem. Not on par, but we deal with it in different ways. And I do look forward to the study that comes out and how it evolves given the free buses that are online. Are they already operating freely in DC, or is that predicated on the upcoming budget?
No, that I think the mayor, that has passed the council in the district. It's to the mayor for her action.
That's it. Okay. Very good. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I want to thank my colleague, Councilman Balcom, for bringing up SNAP and talking about that. And I'm glad to see you're working on it, but just wanted to note the problems with SNAP. And I'm sure as you're investigating, you're looking at the number of people who've actually been dropped recently from SNAP benefits and the difficulties in actually enrolling in this. And again, just putting on my COG hat, this is something the Food Policy Council at COG has been advocating for and looking at. So I'm sure there's some work there, because if you all start looking at it and do this pilot program, maybe there's some opportunities to actually improve SNAP in all of this, so it could be a win-win. And the last thing I want to say that I forgot to mention before, and I appreciate that you were both here before when we were talking about our priorities letter, is again just doing a plug for our North Bethesda second entrance, and how wonderful it would be if we got that moving. So that's it for me, promise.
Very good. So we look forward to continuing the conversations when you get the dates for those public hearings or public hearing, be it here or in Prince George's. Please let us know. And we'll certainly be in close communication as this starts becoming, since residents and riders start becoming more aware of it, and I'm sure they will start reaching out to us with regards to some of these fare changes and other proposals. But the top line clearly is that the frequency is set to increase, which is a benefit to everybody. And so the best way, we will determine the best way to accomplish what is a good policy, right? And with that, Dr. Orlin, are we done? I think we are. We are. Okay.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Good to meet you all.
This T&E committee is adjourned.